Yay Networks.
Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the Great Girlfriend magic on today's show. So without further ado, grab something great to drink, grab your pen and your paper, and get ready for this week's episode. Enjoy! Happy Wednesday, Great Girlfriends. Super excited to be in the kickoff of 2023. And I know you're having an exciting time wherever you are around the world, jumping off your New Year goals and visions and expectations. I love that I get to plant some really great seeds into your hearts and minds as you step into the new year and get ideas for how to propel yourself forward. I always want to include some education and some insights and some nuggets from people who are experts in the field, whatever their respective fields may be. So today, I'm super excited to have great girlfriend Hannah Koenig with me today. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. Happy Wednesday to you. So, Hannah is a multiple six-figure entrepreneur and Forbes Coaches Council member who grew up on food stamps below the poverty line. As a kid, the only thing she understood about money was that her family didn't have it. Her fear of finances carried on into her 20s, where she found herself facing eviction, mountains of debt, and the consequences of just about every financial mistake a person can make. After becoming an entrepreneur, she realized that earning more was only a fraction of the equation. It was then that she committed to fully transforming her relationship with money. In a few short years, Hannah went from a negative net worth to becoming an investor, owning multiple properties, and building tangible wealth. Her own journey of financial liberation catalyzed the work she does today. Hannah helps entrepreneurial leaders build wealth and become well-resourced by cultivating financial stability, sovereignty, and sustainability. Her commitment to closing the wealth gap inspired her to found the Lead Well Summit in 2021, an annual global wealth event. Hannah, that's so powerful. So powerful.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't want to say rags to riches, but rags to riches,
Yeah, I mean, I would say, rags to really understanding my financial power and how to use it.
Ah, good. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. That is a big, for a lot of listeners who started out where you started, they haven't quite propelled themselves into this new stage of understanding financial stability and even financial intimacy, which is something that you want to tap into today.
Mhm.
So I thought it would be great for us to talk about the 4 stages of building wealth, because we have women who are kicking off their new year. They're on the move and they're really wanting to make the best decisions that are sustainable for their lives. And that definitely includes financial decisions. So I
Mhm.
want to know, in this story, Hannah, you didn't necessarily leap, but how did you take yourself mentally from the little girl who grew up on food steps to the woman who's now educating others on the power and the importance of wealth?
Mhm. That's such a great question. And I think when you think of a financial educator, usually you think about someone who either has a degree in finance or was just naturally good at money. And
Yeah.
that is not my story. I was on food stamps in my childhood and as a young adult. I'm a 3-time college dropout, and I have made almost every money mistake a person can make.
Wow.
And that caused a lot of shame for me. It felt like
Mhm.
this thing that you're supposed to know how to do, and I did not get the memo, or I couldn't
Yeah.
read the language. And because of that, I spent a long time avoiding money altogether. And I really, things started to shift for me when I started a business, because that was a
Mm.
really empowering stage where I
Mhm.
started to learn that I can earn, I can
Mhm.
create money. Um, but the thing that happened in really increasing my income
Mhm.
was something I like to call like cash flow inflation in a
Mm.
business, or lifestyle
Mhm.
inflation. That's where all of the sudden it really just expanded all of the habits that I already had that went unaddressed. Right. So I had more
Wow.
money, but
Yeah.
it just amplified the behaviors that weren't looked at. It amplified the lack of boundaries, the financial trauma. And So I remember in 2020 having a very, very successful year, and I worked really, really hard that year. And at the end of the year, being terrified about taxes because I
Mm.
had no idea. And just realizing that, oh, like money alone is not the problem in this
Yeah.
conversation, right? And so when it comes to finances, how we relate to money is as important as money itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first business?
So I first started a coaching business, and I was just doing like life coaching. Yep.
Mhm.
Life coaching.
Mhm.
And then that transitioned into working with small business owners, um, helping them with their marketing and sales and structure,
Mhm.
and which was also like a lot of underlying leadership work. And I had leadership skills. I did leadership development for a long time. And so, having that skill set and then seeing my own behavior and
Mhm.
realizing the thing I had been projecting onto and blaming for my own experience and my circumstances was not actually the root cause of my
Mhm.
experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so at some point it was like, oh, I um it may or may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility.
Absolutely. It may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility. You know, it's interesting because symptomatically, so many great girlfriends that are listening are looking at, the accounts. They're looking at the sum total of their choices, and the desire and the money don't quite match up. There's a big gap in
Mhm.
between, and they're not looking at the root cause. And when you talk about looking at the root cause, it often goes back to psychology around money, things we've been taught, or things we weren't taught, lack thereof, like those things that are kind of triggering. In your like development of the Lead Well Summit, what have you learned about women and our relationships with money? What are some of the things that you've seen as
Mhm.
root causes that may be blind
Yeah.
spots for people who haven't tapped into that just yet?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we can't have a conversation about um, building wealth, especially for women and the wealth gap, without acknowledging the very real cultural and systemic and institutional barriers to wealth for
Yeah,
women.
for sure.
That's real.
Yeah.
And mainstream finance, if you're listening and you feel what most women feel is fear, anxiety, shame, and overwhelm about money,
Hmm.
mainstream finance has failed you, right? It has not
Hmm.
made space for you. It has not prioritized or acknowledged your power. Often it actively mirrors back and sends messages and perpetuates narratives of the opposite. And
Hmm.
when we're not acknowledged as being financially powerful, um, or adversely that, when we're told we're impulsive, when we're told we're
Hmm.
risk averse, um, we start to see ourselves as not powerful.
Right.
So that is at play.
Hmm.
And the funny thing about that is women have an immense amount of financial power. We
Hmm.
outperform men as investors
Hmm.
statistically by a considerable margin. We hold the majority of purchasing power in our households. We are
Absolutely.
better to lend to, right? We're a better
Hmm.
investment. Um,
Hmm.
and the way we circulate money is completely different. Women
Hmm.
tend to spend money in ways that enrich their community, their families. We tend to spend more on education, right?
Hmm.
So we have this immense amount of financial power, and when our power goes unacknowledged, we don't understand how to use it because we're
Right.
not being told that we have it. And when you understand you have power in a situation, the way you show up is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Speaking of power, I want to dive into this word wealth.
Mhm.
It's such a big word, and it can be intimidating for the woman who's starting out, or the woman who's drowning in debt, who's got, overwhelming responsibilities, or feels like she's at the bottom of even, the social media persona of wealth. Could
Mhm.
you, for us, break down how you define wealth?
Yeah. So wealth is, and when I'm talking, I talk about and I teach about building tangible wealth,
Hmm.
because that word can be as esoteric, and it's like, oh, I'm spiritually wealthy. Yes. I am inherently wealthy. Yes.
Yes.
And you are those things. I want you to feel them. I want you to have them. Do your rituals, manifest, please. But I also want you to have purchasing power. I also want you to have
Yeah.
the assets, the equity, right? The
Mhm.
tangible value that affords you optionality, that affords
Mhm.
you opportunity, that affords you access, that allows
Mhm.
you to prioritize the things that matter to you most, that allows you
Mhm.
to say no, right? That doesn't
Yep.
compromise your mental health, your
Mhm.
physical health, your values.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that tangible wealth, and you're talking about the ability to make decisions that really power who you are and what matters to you, quality of life
Mhm.
indicators coming alive in your decision making. I think that's so important. So when we think about that, you know, that definition of wealth that really breaks down in how we move and navigate life according to our financial choices and the things that are tied to it. You break this down into 4 stages, and
Mhm.
I'd love for you to kind of talk us through what these 4 stages look like. And great girlfriends, as you're listening, kind of locate where you are in these stages, or even if you're not in the stages, make sure you're taking pen and paper to take these down and see how you can appropriate choices that would align with your lifestyle. So I
Mhm.
want to get into these 4 stages, and I want to hear stage one because I actually don't know where I am in these 4 stages of
Mhm.
wealth. I, so I want to listen, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm three, maybe I'm 2.5, but Hannah,
Yeah.
walk us through our 4 stages of wealth.
Yeah. So when you're just coming into conversation with this, the first stage is what I like to call reckoning, right? This
Mm,
is where you are just it's an acknowledgement of and money is a value system. So it's this
yeah.
acknowledgement of is where I stand right now, the way I am operating in my relationship with money, the actual money that's in the bank account, where I'm spending, is this reflective of what I value? Is this
Mhm.
reflective of what I want most? Is it structured in a way that can support my long-term vision, right? What the kind of wealthy life I want to build, the way I want money to show up for me. So and that I call it reckoning because often the answer is like not really, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really normal. So if you're listening and you're like, crap, I'm here, right? I'm hearing this conversation. I feel uncomfortable. I just want to acknowledge you because that in and of itself is a huge step.
Mhm.
Awareness, clarity is power. So
Mhm.
just bringing awareness to your finances and to your relationship with money, and that stage of reckoning is really the most transformational step. From
Big step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big step is just like the reckoning is like, oh, this is not working for me, and
Mhm.
that gives you the power to choose something else.
Okay. I
Yep.
love that. Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
from reckoning, we move into reconciling, and that
Mm.
is healing on a relational level, but also, um, you think about QuickBooks, there's a button in QuickBooks where you can reconcile your accounts. If you're a
Mhm.
business owner, maybe or HoneyBook or whatever you use, it's something that really just puts things in right order.
Mhm.
So we've done this um, acknowledgement and we have this awareness now of what's not working. Maybe you've done an actual financial assessment or audit, but you've also audited the behavior, right? Because again, money is a value system and it's relational. If it were just spreadsheets, building wealth is very simple math,
Mhm.
but people are very complex. So you've evaluated. Now you're moving into this place where, okay, I am reordering my behaviors, my habits. I'm putting new systems in place to support me, maybe cash flow management, to help
Mhm.
me better navigate, right? This relationship I desire to have with money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So important. A big piece. I have another friend who works in financial literacy and he talks about keeping your eyes on the prize. And so many times people who have no uh, really understanding of the value system, as you speak of money,
Mhm.
don't keep their eyes on it because they're afraid of what it looks like. But this system of accountability
Yes.
that you're talking about helps you move to what is now stage 3, which I'm sure you're going to give us
Mhm.
that. But I love the idea of the lens, like paying attention to what's happening. Even if it looks ugly for a while, right? At least you have the awareness and you can recognize, and you, like you said, you're starting to build steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And really, the foundational work, if you do the first two, 3 and 4 are inevitable.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have an awareness of your behavior and you are taking accountability for that and you are putting systems in place to prioritize what you want most,
Mhm.
you will get there, right?
Yeah.
It's one foot in front of the next. From there, we move into stabilizing,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So we're just building consistency with new habits and patterns. We are coming into a place financially where not only are our needs met, right? But we are
Mhm.
able to live below our means.
Mhm.
And that gives you the ability to create things like an emergency fund, to put away savings, to start
Mhm.
to grow and invest. You're building uh, trust with the
Yeah.
process, but you also have capital there and things in place that allow
Mhm.
that trust not to be just conceptual. You're like, oh, if something goes
Mm.
wrong, right?
Mhm.
We have a system that ensures stability.
Mhm. Mhm.
And from stability, we move into expansion, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Eventually, the conversation moves beyond how do we stabilize and maintain and it moves to how do we grow? How do we
Mhm.
enjoy, right? How do we
Mhm.
expand from here?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that is, that's investing. And stabilizing may include your, you know, basic, simple retirement investments. But
Mhm.
moving beyond into growth is like, it's a little bit more exciting. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm diversifying my portfolio. Now I'm a little bit more comfortable with risk. I trust this process because
Mhm.
I understand how it works. And that is when we talk about financial intimacy, there are three tenets, and the last one is experiential intimacy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And because under, understanding something in theory is so different to knowing something experientially.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
good. So good. Okay, so Hannah, lots of great girlfriends are going to ask about the tools that you use for
Mhm.
implementation in these stages. Do you have like special tools that you love to apply? Like, say you're in step one and
Mhm.
you really are trying to get the self awareness. Is there like a quiz that you take somewhere to kind of see or get a picture of what your financial, I guess your what your landscape looks like, and
Yeah.
what are some of the tools that you use in each stage?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you, well, first I'll just give you some homework
Okay.
because to get wherever you want to go, you have to have an idea of what that is. If you
Mhm.
don't know the direction, the first thing you need to do is cultivate a vision. So that's where I
Mhm.
start with all of my clients because otherwise you'll jump right into paying off the debt or working on your credit. But without a destination in mind, without something you're working toward, then
Yeah.
it's kind of a short-term goal and you have nothing, you don't have motivation. You don't have an
Mhm.
anchor beyond just this is what I should do. And should is not that motivating, especially
Mhm.
when stuff gets hard. So I want you to ask yourself, if you could just sit down with your journal, maybe you want to make a vision board or a virtual vision board, but start to ask yourself, take the question on a walk, what what is my vision for my wealthy life?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. That's such a great question. Woo! I see it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
What
obviously spend time in this, so, like,
yeah.
well, let me tell you, Hannah. No.
What type of
Great question.
relationship do I wanna have with money? How do I want it to
Yeah.
feel? How do I want money to serve and support me? Because ultimately, money is just this tool for nourishment,
Mhm.
right? It's designed to serve you.
Yep.
So that's what I want you to ask yourself first. From there, I want you to do just a simple financial audit. So this is often just the scariest thing for people. This is really the reckoning, right? piece of paper, couple pieces of paper, and I want you to go through all of your accounts, and I want you to look at all of your spending, at least for a month. Maybe you want to look at 2 and compare. Look at all your debt, right?
Mhm.
Know what the interest rate is. What is coming in? What is going out? What commitments are there? What are your fixed expenses? So usually you focus on the big 3 for that. That's transportation, housing, your minimum debt payments, right?
Mhm.
So all your major fixed expenses. And then not a fixed expense, but that's
Mhm.
choice, right? And then from there you can look at what's in alignment with your values. Um, once you've done the audit, I actually, before you move into your financial goals and the goal setting and paying off debt or anything extreme, or now I'm just going to take all my money and I'm going to put it into the market, I want
Mhm.
you to create an emergency fund.
Mhm.
And that's just 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So that is because emergencies happen. And most people, at least most people in the United States, are not in a financial position, regardless of their income, to be able to handle a financial emergency of like $400 when it arises. The
Mhm.
percentage is super small. So when you plan for that, then things happen and you're prepared. You get a
Mhm.
flat tire, you're prepared. Your dog accidentally eats chocolate that you left out. You're
Yeah.
prepared, right? It's not like,
Yeah.
"Oh, wow, this sets me back." And that,
Mhm.
because money is psychological, that's really important, because
Mhm.
putting these systems in place is great in theory, but if you can't get behind them, or if it
Right.
feels like every time you start to make progress, and something happens and you move backwards,
Mhm.
it's really defeating. So
Mhm.
instead, know that something will happen, put that
Yeah.
system in place. From there, once you have a little bit of an emergency fund set aside, you can look at what you want to prioritize, right? If
Mhm.
that's paying off debt, that might not be.
Mhm.
I think the way mainstream finance, and this is why, I teach financial intimacy instead of financial literacy, because
Mhm.
it's how we relate to money, not just the technical. But
Mhm.
mainstream finance makes it very all or nothing in what
Yeah.
is common, right? Like
Mhm.
all debt is bad. That's not true. And in
Right.
business, intentional debt is called leverage.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So it's
Yeah.
like, what debt is supporting um, you reaching your financial goals and building your
Mhm.
wealthy life, and what debt is getting in the way of that?
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
what you want to look at in the conversation of debt. Beyond that, if you are employed, right? If you're an employee and you have part of your benefits package includes like an IRA or a 401k match, I would at least start contributing to that minimum amount. And
Mhm.
and this all once you have your emergency fund is really where you can make your wealth strategy. Some people call it a
Mhm.
budget. I call it a wealth strategy,
Mhm.
because budget, inherently, for people, they think about budget and they think restriction.
Mhm.
Um, and my ex- I thought the same thing, but my experience of it was the opposite. So at
Yeah.
the end of every month, I sit down and I give every dollar a job. I say, this is how you
Mhm.
get to show up for me. And I make sure that the things I value most happen no matter what, right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
prioritize. And some of those things include skincare at Sephora, and some of those things include getting my nails done.
Mhm.
But they also include my financial goals.
Right, right. I love that. So good.
Yeah.
So good. What, have been some of the things that you affirm, we're really big on affirmations over here, to
Mhm.
yourself? Because coming out of poverty and running toward wealth obviously takes a switch in a lot of things, that conversations that you're having with yourself over
Mhm.
time, and I'm sure you have learned how sort of you have mastery in that space.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've affirmed or that you teach other women to affirm
Mhm.
when they're in that transition?
This is such a good question, and it's nuanced. Um, First, a lot of women ask me, I have a hard time trusting money,
Hmm.
right? How can I trust
Mhm.
money? And
Mhm.
I find that that is always a conversation of trusting yourself. with
Mhm.
money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that has looked like, and it takes time, right? I
Mhm.
had to consistently show up. I have a lot more trust with myself and money now because
Yeah.
I have a history of showing up and implementing those foundational systems. I don't
Mhm.
skip a month. There's not a month where I don't sit down and have a money date. That doesn't
Mhm.
happen, right?
Mhm.
Because I work hard and I
Yeah.
respect my time and I respect my effort. So I respect my
Yeah.
money, right? And
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
of that, it respects me in return. It's a
Mhm.
relationship. So that takes time. I also think that, and studies show this, there's a whole component of our relationship to money that has to do with our nervous system, right?
Hmm.
Trauma has to do with our nervous system. So
Yeah.
sometimes you will experience a financial trigger that doesn't
Mhm.
actually make sense on paper, but you can
Right.
feel it in your body. And in those
Yeah.
moments, it's really important to just have compassion for yourself and to do
Mhm.
whatever you need to do to self soothe or self regulate, to acknowledge yourself in the moment and to be like, hey, what I'm feeling is valid because this
Mhm.
is my history. These are my lived experiences.
Mhm.
And I don't need to bypass that or pretend that they don't exist or pretend that I live in a different reality, or be like high vibe and positive to
Mhm.
build real wealth, right? Like the money in my investment account will continue to grow whether I have a good day or a bad day
Right. That's
because I have
right.
that system in place.
Yeah.
So now I get to show up for me and what do I need to feel safe in this moment?
Mhm.
And then after I give myself what I need, just on a very physical, visceral level, on an emotionally safe level, then I can go back and look at the evidence and say, hey,
Mhm.
also, logically, here's why this doesn't add up. Logically, here's what you have in place. So you're okay, right? If the
Yeah.
internet evaporates tomorrow and you can't run your business, you can pay your team for the next 6 months. You
Mhm.
don't even have to pull back, right?
Yeah.
You can pay yourself because there's an
Mhm.
emergency fund in your personal life and there's an operational buffer in your business, right?
Mhm.
So then I can look at the facts and separate the facts from the feelings, but I don't need to invalidate my feelings in the process.
Mhm.
I also don't let my
Very good.
feelings run the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, especially when it comes to these eating habits, and shopping habits and our
Mhm.
Amazon, escapades at night. So many girlfriends I know have these emotional ties that lead them on these trips where they are
Mhm.
spending things beyond their means and then struggling after, feeling guilt after. So it really ties back to your step one of self awareness and understanding, who you are and how you move and why. Like, why are you doing these things? I love when you
Mhm.
talk about root cause because that is where you can, pull the weeds. You really can essentially make long lasting change when you address root causes.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
it's staying curious and in conversation with yourself. Money,
Hmm.
it's relational, we're relational beings.
Yeah.
So, it's looking at how we relate to it. We're cultivating that emotional intimacy, the safety, the
Hmm.
boundaries, the transparency. We're cultivating the intellectual intimacy, the systems, processes, the financial intelligence, which give us
Mhm.
that experiential intimacy, right? The
Yeah.
the knowing and understanding that money is good because I show up and I make money good. And this is something I think I heard you share a couple months ago. It really is a process of these micro steps for macro
Yeah.
outcomes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the crawl before you walk. It's
Mhm.
like so we're not okay with that. So many people wanna just sprint, and it's like, "No, no, 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 no."
Yeah.
If a six-month-old baby started sprinting, it'd be dead. It wouldn't make it, right?
Mhm.
You have to understand what stage you're in, like you say, and as you point to those stages, the sooner you're aware of what stage you're in or, maybe you've regressed toward from where you were to a stage that you know how to get yourself back in the right direction. But if you
Mhm.
make all these big macro steps without even looking at the micro, the correlation of micro moments that are in between, I think you miss out on why, and you find yourself back where you started because you didn't address the things that make up the day to day, moment to moment choices. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm
That
all
was
about that.
absolutely my experience, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, out of nowhere, from making about $30,000 a year to multiple
Mhm.
six figures, and not feeling any safer with money, not feeling any
Yeah.
clearer about my decision-making process. I was like, this was numb, right? Money didn't
Mhm.
solve anything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it does require the fundamentals. It does require that I be in relationship. It does require that I consciously participate in this process. Um,
Yeah.
and that I plant seeds, right? So many of
Yeah.
us we exist in a culture. We're acculturated to be consumers. We're not
Mhm.
acculturated to think um, with more of an ownership mentality,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I know, for those of you who are listening who are entrepreneurs or who have a side business or a small business, the way you respect your business is different because you have this sense of ownership. And
That's right.
and it's the same thing with your money. We can, if the money you receive is apples, right? We can eat the apple now, um,
Mhm.
or we could eat that apple and we could, instead of throwing away the core, we could plant the seeds and
That's
make sure
right.
that we've got fruit for years to come. Because I know what Hannah wants right now, but
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know what I want
Mhm.
5 years from now. Some things I do, but some things I cannot
Mhm.
control or predict. I don't know for sure. I mean, I hope I do, but I don't know for sure that I'll still want to be in my marriage, or that I'll still want
Yeah.
to run my business, or that I'll still be passionate about the same things. But I do know for sure that I will want options.
Right. 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 Options is so good. Like having the ability to make the choices you want to make when you want to make them. I love that because, like you said, 5 years from now, and who would have guessed 2020 would have hit us? Hello. Everyone was blindsided, and
Mhm.
so many people were restricted in their choices during that time. And then a lot of people felt empowered to make new, fresh choices because they had prepared for a storm, not
Mhm.
necessarily that storm, but
Yeah.
a storm, and just being, like you said, emergencies that are unpredictable. That was the biggest one, of all times. And many people came out of it feeling greater, more empowered, more educated, more aware, and prepared for what is to come in the future. And others are still kind of, um, getting their footing again, really getting their footing again. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to make sure that every great girlfriend, whether you're getting your footing or whether you are off to the races, has the mindset to know that it's all about the choices we make. Like we really do control the power of our choice, not the power of the pandemic or any of those things. We cannot control that, or the power of what happens, politically, socially. We don't have all of those controls in place. We do
Mhm.
have the control of our choice and how we opt into these moments when they occur. And I do think, like you said, having a solid understanding, having that intimacy gives us a safety there to nurture relationships that are meaningful. I want to be so passionate with my money that it wants to be with me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be with my want to be with my money and my money's gone and I have like I don't want it to be the ex-boyfriend. I want it to be,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, or the,
The cupping season, the weekender,
mhm.
like
Right, you're
I
like, we
want it to
only
be
check
like,
in when one of us wants something or when something is wrong,
yeah,
right?
no, I want us to go
No.
together. Yeah, like a
Mhm.
real,
Like, you're
yeah,
my
and I
ride or
want,
die. Like, money can
yes,
be your great girlfriend. Money can be
yes,
the one who says, "Yes, let's do the things that matter to you most. Yes,
yeah,
like, you
yeah,
wanna build that? Let's go." Right?
yeah,
I'm here.
that's
I've
it.
got you. What's on my
Yeah,
end, I've got. Why? Because
yeah,
that relationship has been prioritized because it's been nurtured. Yeah, and
so
you don't
good.
gotta worry, right? Like, is money gonna
Yeah,
have my back? Of course it is,
mhm,
because we have a
mhm,
relationship. Like, I know we're
mhm.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I love that so much. Okay, Hannah, obviously I could keep you forever and I have to bring
Uh-huh.
you back, but where can our great girlfriends keep up with you? Are you
Mhm.
doing a Lead Well Summit in 2023?
Yes, we'll do it again in
Okay,
2023. We just wrapped.
awesome.
It was so awesome. I bring together just like the best female financial educators of our time. Um, we had anyway, you can check it out on my website. We usually do it in the fall. But
Okay.
in between then, I'm at on Instagram at I am Hannah Koenig. You can just come say hi. Tell me what you thought of
Yeah.
the episode, ask me questions. I am I'm the kind of person who actually hangs out there. So I love new friends. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. It's so great to have you, Hannah. And I just want to great girlfriends for those of you that are listening. She is IamHannahKoenig. So make
Hmm.
sure you're checking her out on Instagram and following on Instagram and supporting all of her work and just tapping into those resources because I don't think we have to travel alone. We do have to travel, but we don't have to travel alone. We have,
Hmm.
educators that are in place to support our choices and make sure that we are moving in the right direction. So thank you so much, Hannah, for your time today. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for
Oh, it's my
listening.
pleasure. All right, great girlfriends. Did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast and the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group at The Great Girlfriends. Follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at _great GFS. I'm Sybil Amuti and I'm out. Peace.